But let me try and help you with your self-esteem real quick. I want to share an interesting specimen with you that should lift your self-esteem. Because no matter what you think of yourself, when you take a look in the mirror and you're not happy, at least you're not looking at this man's face staring back at you. A 24-year-old man who just ruined his whole life because he stole over $100,000 worth of Pokemon cards and tried to sell them. He got caught. His name is Ronald. What is his name? Ronnie, Rudolph, Ryan, Richard Nunez. I couldn't remember his name. He's such a worthless worm. It didn't even register as something important. But his name is Richard Nunez, and he is someone I covered on stream a little while back, where he broke into a card shop to steal Pokemon cards. This has become a very common target for robberies of Pokemon cards because of how hot the TCG market is. So there are goobers out there that are now breaking into card shops, stealing them to try and sell them for big money. And as I've said numerous times now, it's a really fucking stupid idea. You have got to be the biggest nincompoop to think this is somehow a good strategy.
Faith was caught on camera in a smash and grab, breaking into a New Bedford collector's shop. And he was after Pokemon cards, very valuable cards, worth over 6 figures.
Smashing through 2 doors to get inside and steal the Pokemon cards.
I am definitely disappointed that this is what it's come to.
A brazen early morning heist that could rival any cartoon villain in only 30 seconds.
The reporter kind of talks about him like he's some kind of super skilled thief, like fucking Team Rocket villain here or something. He's not exactly like some galaxy brain mastermind criminal. He is a Cheeto dust caked on his fucking lips, goofy, greasy goober who juggernauts his way through 2 doors here and just takes the most valuable stuff from the display. He had clearly been to this store before and knew exactly what the high value items were, so he just went in there, breaking the glass, put it in the bag and left. He did not get away with it, and it's something I've talked about a lot. This is a really fucking stupid idea in the first place because there's a variety of reasons. But A, this isn't like gold bricks. You're not taking, something that everyone's going to be wanting to buy. You're taking things that you're likely going to be sitting on for a long time, maybe even forever. Like, there's no guarantee you'll ever even sell these products because they are so expensive. Only a small niche of the niche would ever even buy it, has the buying power to purchase it, because these are like $10,000+ cards, including a $30,000 box that he sold. It's not exactly easy to move those units online or in person. B, when you do try and sell it, you are going to be selling to other people in this industry most likely, and when you steal these items, they put out, of course, an announcement about the items that were stolen, and they have serial numbers and shit. So they get marked as stolen, so when you try and sell them, they can immediately see if it's stolen products most of the time. So most of these people, these fucking idiots, these drooling morons that steal Pokemon cards, do end up getting caught when they go to sell them. And that is exactly what happened to Richard. Get the world's smallest violin out to play this man a song as he spends a good chunk of his life in jail now because $100,000 in stolen property is something taken very seriously, I would at least hope. So First Edition Collectibles is the store that he stole from. They put out this flyer here, basically, online about everything that was stolen and gave all the numbers about it. And about 5 days ago, he was caught when he tried to sell it to another store that got suspicious with what he was trying to sell them, and then noticed, oh, it happens to match what was stolen from First Edition Collectibles. They reported him. They caught him.
More than $100,000 worth of Pokemon cards stolen from the Massachusetts trading card store. Then 2 weeks later, a break in the case, coming about 100 miles away.
A few days ago, I got a phone call of someone trying to sell a Green Wings base set booster box. We were super excited. We haven't had a box come through in a while, so I got him to come into the shop.
Dana Gagnon is the store manager at Collectible Tags in Manchester. He says something seemed off about cards that man was trying to sell.
That's another thing. When these people are stealing cards like this, these really valuable cards, those are pretty hard to come by. So it immediately gets people alert. Like, okay, this is a really interesting thing you're trying to sell me. They're going to do their due diligence to make sure they're not buying a stolen product, because that is a bad thing for them too. People don't just necessarily willy-nilly buy a fucking base set booster box like that without doing some amount of housekeeping to make sure that everything is, squeaky clean here. Also, at the end of the day, it's just shameful. Imagine living life knowing that you're the guy that stole fucking Pokemon cards to try and make money off of it. You could end up like Richard Nunez here, who's going to be behind bars, hopefully for a long time. I think it's going to be something to take seriously because of how common Pokemon card theft is in particular, and the amount that he stole. I think he will probably face some very severe repercussions here. I imagine his life is ruined, which it should be. You're a fucking loser.
Which are valued at $30,000.
He then had a suspicion that it was a similar box to what First Edition Collectibles lost. We acquired a photo of the guy's ID that sold us the box, so we had identification. And so Chris made some phone calls. We realized it was the box.
New Bedford police say they got similar calls from other stores.
And these were so rare that they were serialized in a way that brought people's attention to the fact that they may be the ones that were involved in this theft.
New Bedford police arresting the suspect, 24-year-old Richard Jovan Nunez.
I so desperately wanted to see a picture of Richard. I was hoping they were going to share his mugshot, but it doesn't seem like they've shared that anywhere at the moment, at least not that I can easily find. But I already know he probably has fucking stink fumes coming off of him. I bet if people got to see what a Pokemon thief looked like that alone would be enough of a deterrent to like scare you away from it. Like, you don't want to end up looking like or being like Richard Nunez. Like, he'd serve as such a good example to hopefully stop this from being so common. Anyway, to just dive a bit deeper here into the lore on how they got him, how they finally took down this menace, Detective Nicole Rodriguez of the New Bedford Police Department had received a tip about a person trying to sell the same booster box, that being the base set Unlimited Green Wings. Later that day, Rodriguez received another tip from Tauntaun saying that the person was trying to sell more Pokemon cards and determined it was highly unlikely the same person would possess both without being connected to the original theft. So Nunez was taken into custody of Tauntaun, and they also discovered that he had an active felony warrant out of Tauntaun District Court. So he already had a felony as well, so he is a career criminal, it sounds like. After his arrest, police searched an apartment in Dartmouth where Nunez had allegedly been staying. While there, police said they found a shoebox full of Pokemon cards that matched the ones stolen from First Edition Collectibles. Among the cards stolen was a 1999 Charizard First Edition worth more than 12K, and 2 other Charizards worth 10.6K each. Doesn't really seem like there's a whole lot of wiggle room that they happened to get the wrong guy. Kinda got him with his hand in the cookie jar here. And I imagine his first choice wasn't going to physical locations to sell these items, by the way. I imagine he tried to sell them online first. But, like I said, these aren't items that move fast. And I have to take a guess here that he was probably a little worried that he would get caught if he held them for too long or tried to do more with them online, trying to like sell them at a really discounted price, because that is also something that is a red people that would be interested in purchasing something like this. So, he then ended up driving over 100 miles away to a store that was far from where he was staying, hoping that maybe they didn't know about the stolen cards worth over $100,000 and trying to sell far away, but obviously they were going to know. It's a big deal, and he got caught. So, good news, they got him. Hopefully, we stop seeing so many card shops being robbed. Overall, though, this is a good news story here. They did catch the guy responsible, so I'm happy First Edition Collectibles was able to, help get this guy behind bars. Hopefully they get all their items back in a timely manner as well. Great work from Collectible Tags to recognize that it was stolen items, and they got his identification to help get him caught. Great news all around, and yeah, that's really about it. See ya.
Throughout history, science has pushed the boundaries of what's possible, but sometimes it's crossed into terrifying and unethical territory. This video dives into the darkest corners of human experimentation, real studies and government programs that were so disturbing so morally bankrupt that they were never allowed to happen again. From mind control projects run by intelligence agencies to psychological torment inflicted on children, these are human experiments that were so horrifying they've been buried, covered up, or sealed away, which is why they were never repeated. Unit 731. Pretty sure most, if not all of us, learned about the horrific medical experiments in school, and well, here's something they probably didn't teach you. There was another group doing debatably even worse things at the exact same time, and somehow they managed to stay hidden for decades. We're talking about 1932. This is when Japan had just taken over Manchuria. A Japanese doctor named Dr. Shiro Ishii has this twisted idea where he looks at the Geneva Convention's ban on biological and chemical weapons and thinks, if they banned it, it must be really effective. I mean, pretty terrifying logic, but that's just how some minds work. Now, here's what makes it rather disturbing. Just 30 years earlier, American doctors were praising Japan's medical advances during the Russo-Japanese War. They were calling Japan's military medicine the most humane in history. But Ishii took all that medical knowledge and flipped it into something absolutely monstrous. Under the cover of something called the Epidemic Prevention Research Laboratory, Ishii convinces the Japanese military to fund his biological weapons program. And get this, his main selling point wasn't scientific advancement or military superiority, it was money. He literally told them that germ warfare was cheaper than building tanks and planes. By 1936, they built this massive complex in Pingfang, near Harbin in Manchuria. We're talking about a walled city covering 6 kilometers with over 70 buildings, rivaling even Auschwitz in size. Hidden inside was a prison holding 500 men, women, and children who were about to become human guinea pigs. And fair to say, these Japanese researchers had this twisted sense of humor about what they were doing. In fact, when locals asked what they were building, they just said it was a lumber mill. Then they started calling their prisoners maruta, which means logs in Japanese. According to one source, one researcher joked, "The people are logs." They literally dehumanized their victims to the point where they just saw them as pieces of wood. Now, the experiments themselves were beyond anything the Nazis ever did. They used to do this thing called vivisection. That's cutting people open while they're still alive. No anesthesia, just cutting them, split open. A former Unit 731 member described how victims would be screaming, trying to fight back as they were strapped down and cut open. They also had this researcher named Yoshimura Hisato, who was apparently obsessed with frostbite. He'd take prisoners outside in the Manchurian winter, douse their arms with water, and leave them until their limbs froze solid. Witnesses said the frozen arm sounded like a plank of wood, then hit with a cane. Then there were the weapons tests. They'd tie prisoners to stakes and test flamethrowers, grenades, and various bombs on them. They'd also put people in pressure chambers until their eyes literally popped out. They spun victims in centrifuges until they died, usually around 10 to 15 G-forces, and to have more subjects, though the term victims would probably be more accurate, they had special black vans called Furanki, meaning ravens, that would drive around cities kidnapping people off the streets. The Japanese military police, the Kempai Tai, would just grab random civilians and deliver them to Unit 731, and all of it had the approval of Emperor Hirohito. With an annual budget of 10 million yen, that's about 86 million in today's money. By the end of the war, Unit 731 had expanded to 26 different facilities across occupied Asia with about 20,000 personnel. They were planning biological attacks on American cities, something called Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night, that would have used submarine-launched planes to spread plague across San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. It didn't happen because Japan surrendered, and the states made a deal with Ishii, immunity from war crimes prosecution in exchange for their research data. Now here's the crazy thing. All that valuable research the US thought they were getting ended up being completely worthless. Turns out, brutally experimenting on human beings doesn't actually yield better scientific data than proper medical research. Mind control, aka Project MK Ultra. Alright, so it's 1953, Cold War's in full swing, and the CIA is dead set on the idea that the Soviets have somehow figured out mind control. They're seeing prisoners of war coming back from Korea acting weird, and intel officers are basically losing it over this new thing everyone's calling, quote, brainwashing. Now, Alan Dulles, the CIA director, doesn't want America to fall behind in what he calls the sinister battle for men's minds, so he approves something that will become one of the most disturbing chapters in American intelligence history, Project MK Ultra. And no, this wasn't some rogue operation by a lone government agency. No, this was official US government policy, running from 1953 to at least 1973. It had a budget that would eventually hit millions of dollars. And what was the goal? Well, to find ways to control human behavior using drugs, psychological manipulation, and honestly, whatever they could think of. I mean, it was an experiment after all. The mastermind behind this whole operation was a CIA chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. This guy had access to a relatively new drug that Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann had accidentally discovered in 1943, LSD. And Gottlieb thought, what if I could use this to break enemy spies or create the perfect truth serum? A plan that would then go absolutely insane. They didn't just test the stuff on volunteers who knew what they were signing up for, no. The CIA set up fake brothels in San Francisco and New York, complete with two-way mirrors and recording equipment. They called it, and I swear I'm not making this up, Operation Midnight Climax. They'd have prostitutes slip LSD into clients' drinks, then CIA agents would sit behind those mirrors, literally drinking cocktails while watching these unwitting men have psychotic episodes. One agent, George White, wrote to Gottlieb saying it was fun, asking, where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, deceive, and pillage with the sanction and the blessing of the All-Highest. The thing is, like you probably already guessed, this program was violating every ethical standard there was. The Nuremberg Code had been established just 8 years earlier after the Nazi medical experiments, clearly stating that voluntary consent was, quote, absolutely essential for human experimentation, but the CIA, well, they basically threw that out the window. The most tragic case was Dr. Frank Olson. In November of 1953, Gottlieb secretly dosed Olson and several other army scientists with LSD during what they thought was just a work retreat. Olson had a severe psychological reaction, and 9 days later, he crashed through a hotel window in New York City, falling to his death from the 10th floor. The CIA apparently claimed it was self-harm due to his mental state, but interestingly, they didn't tell his family what really happened until 1975, more than 20 years later. When the family had his body exhumed in 1994, forensic evidence suggested he might have been struck in the head before going through that window. Now you might be wondering, how do we know about all of this? Shouldn't it be locked somewhere in some secret government vault? Well, that's because in 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered almost all MK Ultra files destroyed, but somehow, some financial records survived by accident, and journalist John Marks used the Freedom of Information Act to piece together the nightmare that the project was. Oh, and FYI, this wasn't just happening in some secret CIA basement either. They funded experiments at 44 colleges and universities, 15 research foundations, 12 hospitals, and 3 prisons. And after spending all that time and resources for 2 decades, MK Ultra basically produced nothing useful. LSD was and still is too unpredictable, and the mind control techniques didn't quite work. The Monster Study of 1939. Back in 1939, a 5-year-old orphan at Iowa Soldiers Orphans Home would see a kind-looking lady show up every few weeks, claiming she was there to help with speech. But instead of offering to help, she'd start saying things that would haunt this child for life, insisting they were beginning to stutter, that their speech was terrible, and that they shouldn't speak unless they could do it perfectly. That's what became known as the Monster Study, an experiment so unethical that it stayed hidden for over 60 years. The mastermind behind this nightmare was Dr. Wendell Johnson, a stutterer himself who worked at the University of Iowa. Johnson had this theory that stuttering wasn't born in a child's mouth, but in their parents' ear. Basically, he believed that constantly correcting a kid's normal speech is what actually creates stuttering. But instead of studying this theory in some ethical way, Johnson decided to test it on orphans. You know, kids with no parents to protect them, and maybe no advocates to speak up for them. He got his graduate student Mary Tudor to carry out the actual experiment, and here's what they did. They screened 256 children and selected 22 kids between ages 5 and 16. Half of them already had stutters, half were considered normal speakers. Then they divided them into 4 groups, but the really sick part was what they told the kids who didn't stutter. 6 normal speaking children were put into what they called Group IIA, the negative reinforcement group. Tudor would sit these kids down and tell them something like, the staff has come to the conclusion that you have a great deal of trouble with your speech. You have many symptoms of a child who is beginning to stutter. You must try to stop yourself immediately, don't ever speak unless you can do it right. And yes, those were actual words from that conversation. And that seemingly simple but cruel order actually messed up some of the kids. 5-year-old Norma Jean Poog became so afraid to speak that Tudor wrote, it was very difficult to get her to speak, although she spoke very freely the month before. 9-year-old Betty Romp, quote, practically refuses to talk, and would hold her hand over her eyes most of the time. All the kids in the negative group saw their schoolwork suffer. One boy, 11-year-old Clarence Pfeiffer, started actually correcting himself and told Tudor he could sometimes feel words getting stuck inside him. Another kid, 12-year-old Mary Koloske, became so withdrawn that she stopped talking to her best friend. 2 years later, she ran away from the orphanage. When it was all over, colleagues at the University of Iowa were horrified enough by this experiment that they nicknamed it the Monster Study in the 1940s and 50s. Johnson never published the results, probably because he was embarrassed by what he'd done, and the experiment didn't prove Johnson's theory. The kids didn't actually develop stutters, they just became terrified to speak. All that psychological damage for absolutely nothing. The infamous Tuskegee experiment. For this next case, let's say you're a poor black sharecropper in rural Alabama in 1932. A government doctor shows up and tells you you have, quote, bad blood, a sort of catch-all term people used for everything back then, from fatigue to anemia. And they're offering you something unheard of for someone like you, free medical care, hot meals, and even money for your burial when you die. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, indeed it was. Because what these men didn't know was that they just become unwitting subjects in the Tuskegee syphilis study. 40 years of government-sanctioned medical racism. It started in Macon County, Alabama, a place they called the Black Belt because of its rich soil and the thousands of black sharecroppers, So the year was around 1932, and the US Public Health Service had a problem they wanted solved. They wanted to study what syphilis does to the human body when it's left completely untreated. Now, you can't exactly put out an ad saying, "Wanted, volunteers to let a deadly disease destroy your body," right? So they got creative with their recruitment strategy. They went door to door in this impoverished rural community, telling black men they had bad blood. But don't worry, the nice government doctor said, "We're here to help you for free." They signed up 600 men, 399 who actually had syphilis and 201 who didn't. The researchers further sweetened the deal with perks like meals on clinic days, free rides to appointments, treatment for minor ailments, and burial insurance. The last part feels like they were literally planning for these men to die, which, spoiler alert, they were. And die they did, because the treatment these men received was nothing more than aspirin and iron supplements. The researchers watched as syphilis ravaged their subjects' nervous systems, hearts, and brains. They documented every symptom, every progression of the disease, every death. Then 1947 rolled around. Penicillin had at this point been proven as a cure for syphilis. This should have been the end of the study, right? These men could finally be healed and just be over with it, right? Well, no. Instead, the researchers made a calculated decision to withhold treatment. They convinced local doctors to not treat the participants. The cure existed, but they really wanted to see what happened when the disease ran its full course. For 25 more years, they let men go blind, lose their minds, etc., as they documented their deaths, all while knowing they could save them with a single injection. This kept going until 1966, when a public health service worker named Peter Buxton stumbled across the study and was absolutely horrified. He reported it to his superiors, assuming they shut it down immediately, but they didn't. They formed a committee, reviewed the study, and decided to keep going until every last participant was dead. Buxton couldn't live with that. He leaked the information to journalist Jean Heller, and when she broke the story in 1972, America was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their government had spent 4 decades using black men as human lab rats. By the time the study ended, at least 128 men had died from syphilis or related complications, 40 wives had contracted the disease, and 19 children were born with congenital syphilis. Today, when people ask why there's vaccine hesitancy in black communities, the answer often traces back to a simple fact. The US government really spent 40 years proving that black lives didn't matter to medical researchers. The slave experiment. But Tuskegee wasn't America's first experiment in medical racism. It just so happens to be the most famous. Because decades before the government was watching black men die from untreated syphilis, a doctor in Montgomery, Alabama was already treating black women's bodies like laboratory equipment. Meet Dr. James Marion Sims, a man who history books celebrate as, quote, the father of modern gynecology. He invented the vaginal speculum, pioneered surgical techniques for fistula repair, and founded the first women's hospital in America. Medical schools still teach his methods today, but here's what those same textbooks often leave out. Every breakthrough Sims achieved was built on the screams of enslaved black women who had no choice but to endure his experimental surgeries without anesthesia. See, Sims hadn't set out to be a gynecologist. It just so happened that in the 1840s, treating women was considered beneath most doctors. Distasteful, unsavory work. But when a patient fell off her horse and developed a painful condition, Sims found an opportunity. The woman had what's called a vesicovaginal fistula, essentially a hole between the vagina and bladder that causes constant pain and urine leakage. It was a common complication of difficult childbirth, and there was no known cure. Most doctors would have shrugged and moved on. But Sims realized he'd found his niche market, and in 1840s Alabama, he had access to his perfect test subjects. Enslaved women whose bodies belonged to their masters and not themselves. So Sims apparently struck deals with plantation owners: loan me your injured slaves, pay their taxes and clothing, and I'll experiment on them until I figure out how to fix this problem. He even built an 8-person hospital right in Montgomery's slave trading district. We know the names of 3 women from Sims' own records: Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy. But there were at least 7 enslaved women and girls who became his guinea pigs between 1845 and 49. Lucy was first. She was 18 years old, had recently given birth, and couldn't control her bladder. Sims positioned her naked on her hands and knees in front of nearly a dozen other doctors, then he began cutting. The surgery lasted an hour. Lucy screamed and cried throughout the entire procedure. Sims later wrote, "Lucy's agony was extreme. She developed blood poisoning from his experimental techniques and nearly died. It took her months to recover, but Sims wasn't discouraged. He had a steady supply of test subjects and their pain wasn't his problem." Anarcha, a 17-year-old who had a traumatic delivery, endured at least 30 operations over 4 years. 30 surgeries on the same person without any pain relief. When these women couldn't bear the agony anymore, Sims would apparently drug them with opium to keep them from resisting. That choice, instead of anesthesia, was because this man operated under the racist belief that black people didn't feel pain the same way white people did. This was willful dehumanization because after 4 years of perfecting his techniques on black bodies, Sims finally felt confident enough to try his methods on white women. Guess what? Those same procedures were performed with anesthesia. Then he moved to New York and opened his women's hospital, where he blamed any patient deaths on the sloth and ignorance of their mothers and the black midwives who attended them. Never his methods, of course. The thing is, for more than a century, America celebrated this man. Statues were placed in Central Park, outside the South Carolina State House, and at his medical school. The plaques praised his brilliant achievements without mentioning the women who suffered for them. Well, that was until 2018, because that year, activists finally got the Central Park statue removed. Dr. Kligman's Agent Orange experiments. And I hate to say it, but medical racism shows up again in this case. Dr. Albert Kligman walked into Philadelphia's Holmesburg prison in 1951 to treat an athlete's foot disease outbreak. But when he saw the sea of black faces staring back at him, he didn't see patients who needed healing. He saw something else, and I quote, "All I saw before me were acres of skin." Yes, he actually said that. He finished off by saying, "It was like a farmer seeing a fertile field for the first time. Acres of skin, not people, just skin for his experiments." And what happened next would make Kligman a quote legend in dermatology and turn hundreds of incarcerated men into unwitting lab rats for over 2 decades. Between 1951 and 1974, Kligman transformed Holmesburg into America's largest human testing facility. The men inside, most were black, many awaiting trial, most illiterate, became test subjects for a stunning array of dangerous substances. Dioxin, a key component of Agent Orange, asbestos injections, radioactive compounds, hallucinogenic drugs. Prisoners were infected with herpes, candida, and human papillomavirus. Some had their skin deliberately burned with chemical agents to test healing products. But Kligman's most lucrative discovery was tretinoin, better known as Retin A, the anti-aging cream that's now a billion-dollar industry. Apparently, every time someone buys retinol at CVS or Target, they're purchasing a product developed through the systematic torture of black prisoners, or at least a history in that line. The business model was brutally simple. Pharmaceutical giants like Johnson & Johnson would allegedly pay Kligman tens of thousands of dollars per experiment. The prisoners themselves got maybe $1 a day, if they were lucky. For men who had no other way to earn commissary, bail, or supporting their families, these experiments weren't really voluntary. They were arguably economic coercion disguised as medical research. One of these people was Irvin Moore, who survived over 50 years in prison and participated in multiple experiments. He recalls being assured the tests were safe when he asked, quote, "I was naive enough to believe the powers that be," he said decades later. Moore participated in what prisoners called the milkshake test, living in isolation for 6 months, consuming only mystery protein shakes 3 times a day. Other survivors like Herbert Price described having radiation applied to their backs, leaving their skin feeling, quote, like leather for 3 to 4 months. By the 1960s, over 90% of all investigational drugs in America were first tested on prisoners. But Kligman's operation stood apart because of its scale, duration, and partnerships he cultivated, including contracts with the CIA and the US military. The experiments only stopped in 1974, not because anyone developed a conscience, but because the Tuskegee study had been exposed 2 years earlier, finally forcing America to confront its sick pattern of medical apartheid. Even then, Kligman showed no remorse. Years later, he told colleagues, "It was years before the authorities knew I was conducting various studies on prisoner volunteers. Things were simple then. Informed consent was unheard of. No one asked me what I was doing. It was a wonderful time." A wonderful time? For him, maybe. For those men whose bodies he destroyed? Hell no. But it took until 2021 for the University of Pennsylvania to issue an apology and remove Kligman's name from awards and lectureships. Philadelphia didn't apologize until 2022, and the companies that made billions from products developed through prisoner torture, well, most haven't said a word. Neubauer's triplets. Now you might think that by the late 1960s, researchers might have learned a little something about consent and human dignity, right? No, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. Because while the world was waking up to civil rights, a prominent child psychiatrist was conducting an experiment so secretive that the results are locked away until 2065, long after everyone involved will be dead. See, Dr. Peter Neubauer had a simple question: nature versus nurture. Are we shaped more by our genes or our environments? Most scientists would design studies to compare existing data, but Neubauer decided to play God instead. That's where Bobby Shafran enters our story. He walked onto his college campus in 1980 expecting the typical freshman experience. Instead, everyone greeted him like they'd known him for years. Guys slapping his back, girls kissing him. He'd never been there before in his life. Eventually, someone asked if he'd been adopted, where Bobby said yes. They asked if he might have a twin brother. That's how Bobby discovered Eddie Gallant, who looked exactly like him and was already a student at the same college. Their reunion made the newspapers, but the story was far from over. A third young man saw the headlines, looked at the photos, and realized he was staring at his own face. David Kellman called the twins with the shocking news: "You're not twins, we're triplets." These 3 19-year-old men had just discovered they were brothers. But here's what they didn't know yet. They'd been deliberately separated as part of a psychological experiment. Dr. Neubauer, working with psychiatrist Viola Bernard and the Louis Wise Adoption Agency, had been splitting up twins and triplets for decades. The families adopting these children had no idea their son or daughter had siblings somewhere else in the world. The study was methodical. Researchers would apparently visit the children periodically throughout their childhoods, conducting tests, taking photos, filming them. They told parents that these were routine checkups to ensure the adoption was going well. What they were really doing was documenting how genetically identical children develop in different environments. Sharon Morello was another study subject, and she remembers researchers coming to her home for 12 years. They had her do picture identification, math problems, even reading exercises. She was 49 years old when she learned she had a twin sister. But back to the triplets. After their reunion, they became like minor celebrities. They moved in together, appeared on talk shows, did a scene with Madonna, and opened a restaurant called Triplets Romanian Steakhouse. And the similarities between them were really uncanny. Same gestures, same preferences, same laugh, but despite their joy at finding each other, all three brothers struggled with mental health issues. Eddie Gallen struggled most of all. He was battling bipolar disorder and unable to escape his demons. He ended up taking his life in 1995. And we can see a pattern here because the study affected at least 15 children from 8 to 11 sets of twins and triplets. 3 of them have committed. Many others have struggled with mental health issues their entire lives. As for the study results, we still don't know what concluded because Neubauer sealed all the records at Yale until 2065. That's right, the man who separated siblings, manipulated families, and contributed to at least 4 made sure his findings would remain secret for 75 years. Today, Bobby and David are in their 60s. Nearly 24 other siblings remain separated, many unaware they have brothers or sisters somewhere in the world. Some may have died without ever knowing. The Stanford Prison Experiment. At least the previous experiments had clear villains. Racist doctors, greedy researchers, power-hungry institutions. But what happens when the monsters are just regular college kids? What happens when ordinary people transform into something unrecognizable in a matter of days? That's the terrifying question that psychologist Philip Zimbardo thought he could answer in the summer of 1971. Zimbardo placed an ad in a local Palo Alto newspaper. Male college students needed for psychological study of prison life. $15 per day for 1 to 2 weeks. Seems innocent enough, right? Just a simple psychology experiment about prison dynamics. More than 70 students applied, and after extensive screening to eliminate anyone with psychological problems, criminal backgrounds, or medical issues, Zimbardo selected 24 normal, healthy, middle-class college students. These weren't trouble kids or criminal types. They were your young, average college students looking to make some summer money. Then came the coin flip that would change everything. Half became prisoners, half became guards. That's it. Pure chance determined who would become the victim and who would become the oppressor. But Zimbardo didn't just hand out roles and start observing. He wanted realism. So on a quiet Sunday morning, actual Palo Alto police officers arrested the, quote, prisoners at their homes, handcuffed them, and transported them to the station for booking. Neighbors watched in confusion as these college kids were hauled away in patrol cars. The Stanford County Jail was constructed in the basement of the psychology building. Zimbardo had the laboratory doors replaced with steel bars, creating a solitary confinement closet called the Hole, and installed hidden cameras and microphones. No windows, no clocks, confinement closet called the Hole, and installed hidden cameras and microphones. No windows, no clocks, no connection to the outside world. When the prisoners arrived, they were stripped naked, deloused with a spray, and given uniforms that were deliberately humiliating. Essentially dresses with no underclothes. They wore nylon stocking caps to simulate having their head shaved, and each had a heavy chain bolted to their ankle that they wore even while sleeping. The guards? They got khaki uniforms, mirrored sunglasses to hide their eyes, whistles, and billy clubs. Zimbardo told them to maintain order however they saw fit, with only one rule: no physical violence. Everything seemed manageable on day 1, but by day 2, something had shifted. The prisoners staged a rebellion, ripping off their ID numbers, barricading their cells with beds, and taunting the guards. How did the guards respond? They called in reinforcements, used fire extinguishers to force prisoners away from the doors, stripped them naked, and threw the ringleaders into solitary confinement. But that wasn't enough. The guards got creative with psychological warfare. They created a, quote, privilege cell, where well-behaved prisoners got their beds and uniforms back while troublemakers slept on concrete floors. Then they'd randomly switch who was in the good cell, making prisoners suspicious of each other, destroying any solidarity. By day 3, the first prisoner had a complete breakdown. Prisoner 8612 began crying uncontrollably, screaming, and acting erratically. Even then, Zimbardo's first instinct wasn't concern. It was suspicion that the prisoner was faking it to get out. When parents came for visiting day, Zimbardo manipulated the situation to make the prison seem pleasant. Prisoners were cleaned up, cells were polished, music played over the intercom. The parents, seeing their sons looking distressed, worked within the system to appeal to the superintendent rather than demanding their children's release. The psychological manipulation was becoming more sophisticated by the day. Guards forced prisoners to do push-ups, clean toilets with their bare hands, and perform meaningless tasks for hours. When prisoners needed to use the bathroom at night, they had to use buckets in their cells that guards sometimes refused to let them empty. By day 5, 3 types of guards had shown up: tough but fair rule followers, good guys who did small favors for prisoners, and about a third who were actively hostile and creative in their cruelty. These sadistic guards seemed to genuinely enjoy their power, though none of Zimbardo's personality tests had predicted his behavior. Things came to a head when a new prisoner, 416, went on a hunger strike to force his release. The guards threw him into solitary for 3 hours, triple their own 1-hour limit. When they offered other prisoners a choice, give up your blankets to get 416 out of solitary, or keep them and let him suffer all night, most chose their blankets. Zimbardo ended the study just after 6 days. It was supposed to go on for 2 weeks. In that time, 5 prisoners had suffered emotional breakdowns, guards had become increasingly sadistic, and everyone involved had lost sight of the fact that this was supposed to be an experiment. Cincinnati radiation experiments. There's one more story that brings all the horrors together. Racism, medical exploitation, military interest, and institutional gaslighting that lasted for decades. So we're heading to Cincinnati, where a radiologist convinced the Pentagon to let him blast cancer patients with the equivalent of 20,000 chest x-rays at once. Dr. Eugene Sanger had a problem in 1960. The Cold War was heating up, and the Department of Defense wanted to know what would happen to soldiers exposed to massive radiation on a nuclear battlefield. They needed data on how the human body responds to full-body radiation doses that would likely be fatal. So Sanger, a radiologist in the University of Cincinnati, saw an opportunity. He applied for and received $671,000 from the Defense Atomic Support Agency to conduct, quote, whole-body radiation experiments. His test subjects were cancer patients at Cincinnati General Hospital. Between 1960 and 1971, Sanger and his team subjected 90 cancer patients to total body radiation doses far beyond what was medically done at the time. The patients thought they were receiving cutting-edge cancer therapy. What they actually got was a dose of radiation equivalent to standing at ground zero of an atomic bomb test. Yup, I keep repeating how lethal it is because it's actually unbelievable. Also, maybe too surprising based on the cases we've covered, 62 of the victims were African Americans with low incomes. They came to Cincinnati General, the charity hospital, seeking help for their cancer. Instead, they became test subjects for the Pentagon's nuclear warfare research. The ages range from 9 to 84 years old. Yeah, you heard that, 9 years old. Terry Lee Holmes was just a child when he was blasted with radiation in 1969. He died 7 years later. The oldest patient, 80-year-old Margaret Bacon, suffered a stroke during bone marrow removal, then received the full-body radiation and died 6 days later. All of the patients experienced horrific side effects: nausea, diarrhea, hemorrhaging, fatigue, and permanent disabilities. And Sanger deliberately withheld anti-nausea medication for 3 days after the radiation unless patients specifically complained. He wanted to study their suffering. After each radiation session, urine and blood samples were shipped to an Army researcher at Fort Knox, Kentucky. The patient's pain was data points for military planners, wondering how long irritated soldiers could remain functional. And meanwhile, the bodies kept piling up. 1/4 of the victims died within 2 months of radiation exposure. 3/4 died within a year. By 1993, when federal investigators finally looked into the experiments, 89 of the 90 patients were dead. The experiments only stopped in 1972 because of one person's courage, Martha Stevens, a University of Cincinnati English professor who wrote a faculty report exposing the radiation experiments. Combined with pressure from Senator Edward Kennedy, her whistleblowing finally ended the Pentagon contract. But like so many of these stories, the truth was buried for decades. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. If you haven't subscribed, it would be awesome if you could subscribe. And I will see you guys next time I upload.
Today's video is sponsored by Simply Safe. There's no safe like Simply Safe. More on that later. Hello and welcome back to Jarvis Johnson Gold, the premium channel that is free. It is free, but if you're watching this, you're premium. And today I'm upset because all I want to do in this life is listen to YouTube videos in the background while I do other things. And that experience has been ruined and compromised for me because of AI channels on YouTube. So I'm a big NBA fan. I used to live in San Francisco during the beginning of the Warriors dynasty. If that matters to you, I'm sorry. I sometimes relax by just listening to various NBA adjacent content or video essays or what have you. I was like playing video games or something when I started hearing this video in my ear that was just so obviously off to the point where it was, I was like, oh no, we gotta change the channel, we gotta cut this out and move on about our day. I did clock it, and now I'm standing on business. And it was by this channel B-Ball Explained. Here is a little of the video.
Wilt. The league had never seen anything like him, and they had no idea how to handle it.
It starts like we're halfway through the video, even though we just began. But when I was just listening to it and not seeing the visuals, I assumed that it was auto-playing something that I had already started watching in the past. But then I looked at my screen and realized it was just a bunch of unrelated images and text. They had no idea. Yeah, that's the most important thing here.
So they changed the rule. His insane athleticism and size let him swat shots that were still hovering above the rim.
Okay, so there was a rule change. They didn't tell us what rule is changing. Neither of these images is he swatting shots. He's kind of just squatting down. Ball looks really small in his hands, though.
They didn't want players touching the ball while it was still inside that invisible cylinder above the rim.
Right, so they didn't want players touching the ball while it was still inside that invisible cylinder above the rim. At this point in a video editor's journey, a storyteller's tale, you'd say, hey, let's show the invisible cylinder above the rim. And it's the same fucking picture. it's the same picture of Wilt squatting down. Nowhere is there a cylinder.
Then came the lane. Back then it was only 6 feet wide. Wilt parked himself near the hoop and bullied everybody.
Then came the lane, and it is a figure diagram of a entire basketball court. That is not what the lane is. Also, this is clearly from someone else because all of these parts on the court are labeled, but they are not referring to that at all.
League had to push him back, so they doubled the lane to 12 feet.
They doubled the lane to 12 feet, depicted here by just making the entire basketball court bigger, which is not what they intend to communicate, I would have to assume. This, as you can tell, it's just like technically content. You know, it's jingling keys for adults. But it has 800,000 views in 1 month on a channel that did not have a lot of subscribers a month ago when they posted this. So clearly it's working. And the people in the comments, if they are real, seem to be enjoying and actively engaging with the content, just like for real YouTubers. Someone's even doing that thing where they timestamp, where they talk about different players. Okay, basketball talk is over, I promise. Thank you for bearing with me. This channel is now at 111 videos. It was started in March. They've been posting 30-minute edited videos that seemingly would require research daily as a brand new channel, which is totally a thing that can happen, but it feels a little far-fetched. It felt even more far-fetched when I was recommended this video from Slime9K. This channel is AI, here's how I know. This video has now picked up a bit of steam, but it was new at the time, and in it, there's a screenshot of Movies Explained, which is not a channel I was recommended, but it did look familiar. In this video, which you should watch, I'll link it in the description, he explains why he thinks that this channel is AI, and there's a number of reasons that you could imagine from that basketball video, but some of them that are a little less obvious are things like ChatGPT have a tendency to use M dashes, and even though that's not something that you see because you don't see the script, you can kind of hear a vocal M dash in the speech. They often structure arguments as it's not just X, it's Y, or they list things in counts of 3, and all of these things can be strategies employed by real people, but they are so commonly used in AI and so prevalent in these videos. And then you add in all the other stuff that we've already looked at. The intonation of the voices don't make sense. The videos are coming out all the time. The editing is bad. It just like doesn't even feel that connected to what the script is saying. Just when I was filming this, I was like, there's a basketball channel. Is there a football one? Yeah, apparently, and it's not as successful, but they're giving it a go. They're not posting daily, but they're close. It gives off the same vibe, and it was started even earlier. Connected? I'm not sure, but the title formatting looks familiar, the thumbnails look familiar, the profile picture looks familiar. But before I keep yapping, we have a brief word from today's sponsor, Simply Safe. Look, you might troll tray viewer. Now back to me. Let's check out every unbreakable college football record explained.
Georgia Tech, 222-0 win over Cumberland.
Okay, so this is something that I happen to know about because I went to Georgia Tech and I went to a lot of football games there, and they do not shut up about this game. Let's see what they've got to say. I already have my suspicions from the way the voice sounds.
This isn't just a college football record. It's the most lopsided game in the history of the sport.
All right, so we already have the topic sentence structured like it's not just delivery, it's DiGiorno. There's a video that Schleim links by Evan Edinger that I just watched as well. that is about kind of AI, the rhetorical techniques that AI commonly uses. So I'll link that in the description as well.
In 1916, Georgia Tech defeated Cumberland College by a score of 222-0.
Okay, so we've kind of just repeated ourselves because they just said Georgia Tech defeats Cumberland 222-0, 1916, and then just repeated that information, except for now there's a very low resolution screenshot of the Wikipedia page. Like if you or I put that in there, we would go, oh, that's really low resolution. Let me see if I can fix that before this video goes live. But then I realized this is on Google Images if you search for this game. Would you look at that? This post is from 2014 and it's a very low resolution screenshot of Wikipedia from 10 years ago. I'm going to be building my theory of the case, which is you have an AI writing a script, you have AI grabbing relevant images, and then you have AI creating like a glorified slideshow. And actually the fact that there's not much happening in this video makes it very easy for me to believe that it was done with AI. In fact, if there weren't animations, I would just assume it was a slideshow generated by AI, but there's a little bit more sauce, but only a little bit. This seems very achievable for AI to do, and I will show you how people are doing this. Though I do think that this particular creator, if you want to call him that, is doing something homegrown or using a tool that I'm not exactly sure to make these videos, but we'll get to what these tool chains look like.
By a score of 222-0. It remains the largest margin of victory ever recorded in college football.
No shit. 2 seconds ago, you just said it was the most lopsided game in the history of the sport, and it's not just a college football record. And now you're saying, hey, it's a college football record. Did you know that? It's filling the space. It's like repeating, it's getting to the word count, you know? They definitely started with, hey, AI, make a 28-minute video. By all means necessary. Who knows what other channels exist that I haven't been able to find? You can let me know in the comments if you've been recommended similar content in whatever your niche content viewing habits are. The one thing that I'll note here is that it's complete slop and it's actually getting a lot of watch time. In the 4 months since Basketball Explained was created, it's generated 11 million views, which is a considerable amount of viewership and average view duration, which is going to mean a considerable amount of money, doing what I have to imagine was not a ton of work, especially knowing that the AI was doing the majority of that work. I double checked, and this content is actively monetized. So they're making the same type of AdSense dollars that I make on any of my content. Seems like a pretty good deal, right? Like lots of free money for very minimal work. Why aren't more people doing this? Well, what if I told you that this was just the tip of the iceberg and we are witnessing the excrement of the new get-rich-quick scheme that is YouTube automation? I'm no stranger to content farms. We have always had companies making slop content on YouTube for profit. Much of my early YouTube career was spent talking about these channels, but we have now automated them. If I'm to type YouTube automation tutorial into my search bar, I would see lots of results. I tried faceless YouTube automation for 200 days, truth about YouTube automation, actual results, how to make fuck you money with YouTube automation, how to start a YouTube automation business step by step. Here is a video by someone named Baddie in Business, how to start YouTube automation step by step, no face, no editing, free course, 1.4 million views.
Hey, future millionaires.
Hey, future millionaires. It doesn't feel good. I don't want to be promising that to people.
You may have seen faceless channels on YouTube before. These channels are getting millions of views with thousands of followers just by creating simple videos about different topics. Motivational videos, educational videos, travel.
This is funny because faceless YouTube is not inherently where the problem is, okay? You can see here, she references Brightside, which is a known content farm with the same owners, the sole publishing, as 5 Minute Crafts. I even watch faceless YouTubers all the time. Summoning Salt only did a face reveal like this week, and they've had their channel for like 5 years. Most video essayists on YouTube aren't showing their face. I watch a guy, shout out to a funky diabetic. This video is 5 minutes of a guy talking over just an image of Damian Lillard. That's fine. I like this channel a lot. The issue is the AI slop content of it all. That is what it's a little weird to be like, hey, faceless YouTube is all over. Here's some channels that aren't AI, but let's create slop together. Millionaires. What's a little surprising to me is where channels like Brightside and 5 Minute Crafts, like these old school content farms, have fallen off. Like their old strategies don't work the same as they once did. AI channels are a little bit harder. It's a little bit tougher of a whack-a-mole game because the fire hose is so powerful. It's not just a couple of companies creating content. It could be anybody creating thousands of videos a week that is going to overwhelm any individual who's tasked with identifying AI content. Probably going to take AI efforts on behalf of YouTube to detect AI. Thankfully, like, AI is reasonably good at detecting AI right now, and let's hope that YouTube is investing in those tools. But we need to put the pressure on YouTube because this just dilutes the platform. It makes the platform worse for everyone. A couple of people makes some dollars, but I'd prefer slop content by real people at the very least. Is that too much to ask? To me, this is like a new drop shipping. I have an Instagram account where I follow and like the worst stuff that I can find, and a while back I would get like ads of people promising if you buy their course they can teach you to drive buy a Lamborghini with your YouTube automation funds, you know? YouTube is trying to tackle this and recently announced a policy related to faceless YouTube channels. In typical YouTube fashion, the messaging was very confusing and it scared a lot of faceless content creators who are just not showing their face and not at all mass producing content or creating like complete slop content entirely from different AIs bouncing off of one another. Then YouTube had to come out and clarify and even in some ways like walk back the statement. And so now it reads, we're making a minor update to our repetitious content policy to better clarify this includes content that is repetitive or mass produced. We're also renaming this policy from repetitious content to inauthentic content. This type of content has always been ineligible for monetization under our existing policies. But as I've shown you, this clearly AI content is monetized. You can go on Twitter and look at people who are like, wow, save this faceless YouTube channel for later. They started 5 months ago and have generated 5.4 million views. That's nearly $30,000 with a $5, $6 RPM. Not bad considering they use an AI voice for every video, images generated by Midjourney or Leonardo AI, scripts that are likely 80% written with AI help. See how simple faceless YouTube is? There's just constant success stories of people essentially duping YouTube into letting their slop content on the platform. I want you to understand how simple this is. How to start a faceless YouTube channel with AI 1 hour course.
It took me 365 days to make $500,000 with this faceless YouTube channel. So when I started this channel, I was a broke high school student with $120 to my name.
Maybe as you should be, some might say. Aren't most high school students broke? You're in high school. You don't have a 6-figure business. That is normal and okay. I don't know when it became this thing where like you need to be stunting. You need to be stunting with all that cash, you know? Just be in fucking high school, but whatever, man. Nothing wrong with starting a business, but like, I do feel like we're losing the plot a little bit.
I make a full-time income from my faceless channels, travel the world, and work from absolutely anywhere in the world.
What happened to high school? Okay, I hope you, okay.
After watching this video, you'll have the entire blueprint I used to go from $0 to $150,000 a month.
Yeah, so it sounds good, right? Well, here's the process. You start off by determining a niche. They just choose the history niche, but you could choose the basketball niche. Just look at the movies niche. Look at any of these explained videos and where they're operating in, and they're following a very similar roadmap. They identify 3 channels that are real, as far as I know, channels that they want to copy. I don't know if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Beast got into hot water for creating a tool that would allow you to rip off other creators' thumbnails. This is like even further than that. It's here's how to just take a channel and create the AI slop version of that channel to then impede in that niche. And even if you're not successful in overtaking the niche, you're still drafting behind legitimate channels with your AI slop and like taking ad revenue that I'm not gonna say should go to these other creators, but at the very least, a lot of the audience are unsuspecting that they're watching content that wasn't really created by a person. Some people don't care, but I do think that YouTube doesn't want a platform that is full of self-ingesting, regurgitated AI slop, where everything is, because this AI is all trained on these creators anyway. If I go into ChatGPT right now and say, give me 10 Jarvis Johnson YouTube video ideas, how the fuck do you know about Jarvis Johnson's style? You know what I mean? You didn't just process this because you barely had to talk to the internet. If I asked it a question that it had to look up, and I know this because we talk a lot about AI on the podcast, and this video is actually inspired by an upcoming episode of Sad Boys. Check that out in the description. I recently used ChatGPT to try and help me play Final Fantasy X while comparing it against a real guide for the game in just my own eyeballs, and it gave me so much incorrect information that I eventually insulted it to the point where it would always search the internet before it gave you results. And I can tell this is not searching the internet before it gives me results because it didn't have to query for any amount of time. It's just already baked in knowledge about me that I didn't consent to. So all that's to say, the reason that these AI models can even copy these people's channels is because they have ingested, with dubious legality in a lot of cases, a ton of existing YouTube content for free. It was a similar thing that people got upset with about Mr. Beast's thumbnail thing. The worst part is that some of these things are things I've considered doing videos about. The billion-dollar industry of lying to your dog, I've considered that. What the hell, man? Give me my thoughts back. Want a more themed set? AI rabbit holes, TikTok absurdity, tech bro takedowns? Nothing is real anymore. So first of all, you figure out whoever you want to rip off, and then you plug in that into ChatGPT and you say, hey, give me some ideas for like a rip-off channel that like sounds like a channel that exists but doesn't technically exist. You can take inspiration from the names Beginning to Now, Fire of Learning, and Voices of the Past, and then boom, fucking Legacy of Ages. Sounds like a goddamn Zelda game. Legacy of Ages. That'll be the name of our AI history channel. And then you go into Leonardo AI and you create some AI art. Most of us already know the AI art vibe, so we know what that looks like. And then one of the more insidious parts is that there's a tool called Tube Magic. You can put in any YouTube channel or channel URL and generate video ideas against that channel, and from that generate script ideas that you can, on a slider, just choose how long you want the script to be, and then you hop on over to the entire history of Japan from samurai to superpower, and then you can generate the script. And this is like what he does in the video. They send that over to another tool called 11 Labs, which is famous for like its voice cloning, AI voice cloning tool, that you can create an AI voice of yourself, but they just have it voice over the script. And then you've got other tools like Midjourney or Leonardo AI. For Legacy of Ages, they generated this like generic looking Japanese man, by the way, and now they're going to animate his mouth with DID/Hey Now, which looks like shit, by the way, but that's subjective. And then you generate thumbnails that have the extremely AI look, as we are all now familiar. Then they animate their like mega AI ass images to like slightly move a little bit, something that you could have otherwise accomplished with like a slow zoom, because it's not like they look real, but whatever, it's already so fake, who cares. Then they edit the video themselves, which is the craziest part to me, because I'm pretty sure AI exists to do this. Case in point, all the B-Ball Explain channel, I'm pretty sure a human being did not edit that. So they edit their talking head of this like fake AI Japanese man over their fake AI backdrop. Then they create a thumbnail with AI and a little bit of Canva, you know, the Salt Bay on top. And then you just keep repeating that until you're so rich that you don't go to high school anymore. Something that's funny to me is that when he shows you how to upload it to YouTube, you select no on altered content, and he's like, trust me. And the description of altered content is makes a real person appear to say something they didn't do. Okay, no. Generates a realistic looking scene that didn't actually occur. I mean, it depends. There's another tool, vid.ai, that basically does everything for you. All you have to do is give it a title. I want to play around with vid.ai to see like what its capabilities are, but there's a certain point where you're like, how much am I actually just doing the unethical thing I'm attempting to call out? So let me know your thoughts on that. I think that obviously, given that I'm discussing it in kind of trying to peel back the curtain, it's quite expensive, so that's another reason I didn't want to use it out of the gate. Let me know if you'd want to see something like that. There's another channel called The AI Guy, which I guess is a person, or is he AI? Made a video called I copied a $13,000 a month YouTube automation channel using AI. It's like AI on AI violence, I guess. They're using vid.ai to copy this channel Discover the Globe that just creates like Trump fearmonger content that's extremely low effort and wrong factually. Oh, sorry, no, it was called I copied a $42,000 a month YouTube automation channel. So I guess this is like a trend. It's just a bummer all around, and I actually had to record this video twice because my camera was out of focus, and the first time I recorded it, I hadn't even confirmed that this new YouTube policy had been enacted. It's now been a week since it's allegedly been enacted, and tons of these AI channels are still monetized. So I don't really understand who it's stopping, but I personally need to see better, because it's really just a race to the bottom, and it dilutes the quality of the platform. It makes it a less usable platform to just have completely AI generated nonsense everywhere. It's kind of like on Twitter when most of the time you look at the replies, it's AI rage bait accounts. I don't want YouTube to become that, and it seems like we're on a fast track to that because there's so much money to be made in duping people into watching your slop. So that's my rant. Sorry, I don't want to act like I don't have faith in the consumer or in the viewer, but a lot of times people are just looking for background content and maybe aren't as discerning or aren't able to turn the video off. They're like driving and listening to something in the background, audiobook style. It's easy to say that the average consumer can just notice that it's shit AI content and turn it off, and then it won't be successful. But we already know that these people are printing hundreds of thousands, if not more, dollars with completely AI generated content. And the same could have been said for AI images only a couple of months ago or a year ago. How long ago were we comparing fingers and going, oh look, AI fingers, and now AI fingers work just fine? Will Smith's spaghetti video was only a couple of years ago, and now it's starting to become the benchmark for how good AI video has gotten. Not to mention Google's like VO3, where they're doing like on the street interview AI videos. I think that at the very least you need to add a field to YouTube content publishing where you say, is this an AI generated video? And then say, that means that the majority of this shit was generated with AI. That content needs to at the very least be flagged. I don't know what YouTube does. I don't know all the right things to do about it. I'm just identifying what I consider to be an issue. And I also worry about the false positives, because it's a difficult problem. It's a difficult problem to solve at scale. And I myself and many creators like me have been caught up in YouTube's automated tools before, despite being not offending or breaking a rule. You know, once I had a video demonetized because it said I discussed like acts of war, and it was a video about Ellen DeGeneres. And it's only because I have a large Twitter following and could complain that anything got done about it. So I just worry about this for like my fellow creators en masse. But with all that being said, everything else is great. I hope you're doing good, and I'll see you next time. Stay gold, everybody.
I know there's been an overwhelming amount of bad news recently, and I figured when it rains it pours, it's best just to give you even more right now. It's official, Akon City has been scrapped. I'm as shocked as you are, I'm as disappointed as you are, angry, sad, inconsolable even. Akon City was set to be like one of the great wonders of the world. It was going to drag us kicking and screaming into the next age of humanity. It was a multi-billion-dollar project from Akon, Mr. Lonely himself. The city had breathtaking renders for its unique architecture that all looked like fucking barnacles, and it was even going to be powered by its own cryptocurrency, A-Coin. I don't know about you, but I was scratching at my neck, just itching to convert all of my money to A-Coin. But unfortunately, it looks like we're never going to get to experience this utopia. I covered this in a video like a year ago, but in a nutshell, Akon pitched Senegal on this big project, multi-billion dollar, he hyped it up, really just breathed a bunch of fucking baloney into it about... Oh man, it's so absurd that it actually just put some fucking dirt in my throat and made me cough. But he pitched them on this idea, they bought into it, and it went nowhere. and it never really even stood a chance. He wanted to mint a fucking city on the blockchain, basically, and all of his design documents were the most outlandish load of hogwash I've ever seen. We'll go over that in a moment. His renders are actual cinema. It's been many years since Akon was supposed to get all of this in motion. It was a $6 billion real-life Wakanda powered by Acoin, but the property got stuck in limbo, and after all these years, the only thing that's been built is a welcome center. Akon was warned in 2024 that failure to meet deadlines and payment schedules to Sapco would result in the forfeit of the property, and that's exactly what happened. Akon continued to stall, and now the land has returned to the state, so they're going to be prioritizing a tourism project instead. So RIP to Akon City, but let's not forget the memories we made along the way. Take a peek at what this could have looked like. So here's the entertainment district. What are these? These aren't even buildings. This looks like when you go into Roller Coaster Tycoon and fuck up the terrain. It's even bad CG. Yeah. It's melted. Yeah, I guess their chief architect is Salvador Dali. Brought him back with the Akon City in-house necromancer. The Tech District? What does this mean? Tech 003421? What tech what? What is the tech? What are they doing here? Lex Luthor live here or something? Butt Plug City. Yeah. This is the police station here. They inhabit this pack of hot dogs. Here's the fire department, which is conveniently placed in the worst possible position for them to get anywhere, because they're gonna have to navigate this minefield, this fucking labyrinth. Good luck having a quick response time from the firefighters. Osmosis Jones type landscape. Bro modeled the city from the mitochondria. Oh, here, Akon Tower. He's even got his own, like, Avengers building. So this is where Akon lives, and only Akon. The whole city's design documents look like Spy Kids 3D when they go into the game. Like, there is no sane architect that ever signed off on these. I have half a mind to think that Akon just went to Fiverr and went to a 3D modeler and said, make me like a wacky theme park, and then he just tried to parade it around as like his blueprints for Akon City. Now, as mentioned, none of this ever got built. Nothing ever even got close to getting built. The only thing that currently exists where Akon City was supposed to triumphantly stand is a welcome center. And it is a really interesting looking welcome center at that. A YouTuber actually recently went and did a video on this whole thing. It's a great video, and I just want to show you a quick clip from when they go to the welcome center and one incomplete building that started, stopped, and is just stuck in purgatory.
On getting here, I was welcomed by this building with a graffiti written Akon City boldly on the wall. This is nothing futuristic like I saw in the CGI.
So we're approaching Akon City, as you can see. That is Akon, and it says Akon City.
The best city. You have to go, guys. You have to do it.
Alright, we're almost close. That's Akon City over there.
We drove inside the city, and this was all I saw.
This right here is the only building that has been built in Akon City.
Although this building looks futuristic, but this project is looking like a disappointment.
That's as far as Akon City ever got. A welcome center with some really interesting graffiti on it, and that one weird, incomplete building. I don't exactly know what that building is supposed to be based on the design documents that Akon has shown us. Maybe that's one of the Tech 002 buildings. It could even potentially be the fire department. I can't tell. You know, it's not as recognizable in that state as it was in the Second Life montage that he made of buildings. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about this and let you all know the bad news that Akon City does seem to be dead. It's actually really fucking sad. Not that Akon City failed, that was always going to fail. This very clearly had all the makings of a scam. Like, that's what it seems like was the goal the whole time here from Akon. That's how it comes across. Because this is actual fucking horseradish. It's sad because he just clearly came in here with no real plan and seems to have just wanted to exploit the people here. And that kind of shit just sucks. So, yeah, anyway, just wanted to give you the update on Akon City. That's about it. So, yep.
Hey guys, Blaming on George here, and a few months back I had a series called The Lost Media Case Files, where I discussed new pieces of lost media. With so many weird mysteries being posted online, I wanted to revive that series as kind of a monthly feature. And in order to do so, we'll need some protection, and that's where this video sponsor Surfshark comes into play. With Surfshark, all your online activity stays private, so you're safe from hackers even on sketchy Wi-Fi. The show was cancelled. No te equivoques, a Mexican version of Jackass, hosted by Tony Dalton, yes, Lalo Salamanca from Better Call Saul. The show was cancelled after a 19-year-old contestant died from drinking 40 tequila shots. This first post is from good old r/lost media, and it's one of the more tragic ones I've come across. It's not a very long post, but let's delve into it. The OP writes, "This is an absolutely wild show and story. Only one episode is publicly available. The episode that had the contestant dying was filmed. However, it seems that info and media on this has been scrubbed due to the incident. The only episode available is this one." From the Spanish Lost Media Wiki, translated and shortened, No te equivoques was a Mexican comedy program that premiered in 2001. It was created and hosted by Tony Dalton and Krzysztof Rzyński. The series was cancelled in 2002 after a contestant died during the filming of an episode. According to Tony Dalton himself during an interview, the idea for the show came after watching an episode of the well-known Jackass on MTV during a trip to the United States. A total of 11 episodes were produced. In them, the host performed all sorts of dangerous or daredevil challenges to entertain the audience. According to the official reports, on December 21st, 2002, Marco Israel Lopez, a 19-year-old young man, was with his friends at the VAT Crew nightclub in Monterrey, Mexico. At around 1:30 a.m., Tony Dalton and Krzysztof Rzyński showed up to record an episode of No te equivoques. According to witnesses, Dalton and Krzysztof began inciting the audience to participate in a challenge that consisted of drinking 25 shots of tequila to win a bottle of wine. Marco Lopez was chosen to participate. Before the show began, the host told Marco to say, "This is make no mistake," a phrase often used by contestants on the show. He then drank 30 shots of tequila, surpassing the record and winning the challenge. However, instead of crowning him the winner, Dalton and Krzysztof encouraged him to drink 10 more shots, bringing his total to 40. Minutes later, Marco collapsed backstage and died a few hours later. According to a witness, 3 Televisa cameras were present at the scene and recorded the entire event. The show was cancelled after this incident, for which even Tony and Krzysztof had to testify before a judge. The nightclub where the death occurred had to close since then, and it was not until 2020 when it was demolished. To date, very little information exists about this program, despite being a project well known to Tony Dalton fans. Televisa has never mentioned the show, and its hosts seem uninterested in mentioning it, most likely due to the death of young Marco Lopez. Only one episode was recovered, uploaded to YouTube in 2015. The only available episode on YouTube was uploaded by a channel named L. Tim Drake, who sadly hasn't uploaded in several years. Some Reddit users tried to contact the channel owner to see if they have more episodes, but to no avail. Now apparently this is a super well-known case in the Latin American side of the lost media community, but some searchers have doubted the possibility of this episode ever being found. Quote, This is a really hard case to uncover since Televisa is really strict with their copyrights, especially with a case as sensible as this. Also, the hosts don't want anything to do with the show, so that's a dead end. I highly doubt something significant can be found, but at least I'm glad more people know about this case. There is one more interesting tidbit about this episode. The OP later commented, "I saw another Reddit post that claimed that there was an alleged cover-up going on, since this show was posted on r/Today I Learned with almost 5,000 upvotes, and it got deleted." I wish this thread was still available, and for the life of me, I cannot find it. I don't know why it was deleted from Today I Learned. That looks pretty suspicious, but I don't want to jump to any conclusions that there's a cover-up or something. And to make matters worse, OP's Reddit account has also been suspended. There's plenty of intrigue in this mystery, which is exactly why it continues to draw attention. But realistically, the chances of this ever surfacing are slim, assuming it even aired in the first place. And if it did, maybe it's better off lost, out of respect for Mario's family, of course. Help me find a cult website. On June 9th, Reddit user PositiveCable1023 made this post onto r/RBI, or the Reddit Bureau of Investigations. To be fair, I'm unsure if websites count as media, but it's such a strange post, I wanted to share it anyways. Quote, "About a year ago I stumbled upon a very strange website. It was a link on an About the Author page within a Myers-Briggs test. Once you open the website, you were greeted with hundreds of weird links titled multicolored symbols. I mean hundreds. You would scroll through all of these different bizarre labeled links with strange typography and convoluted meaning. You'd click one and it would be a poem of sorts. You'd sometimes see satanic or bizarre background art. The writings themselves were fascinating. Many of them talked about reprogramming your subconscious and obeying the beast. At least I think that's what it was calling itself. It got more disturbing the farther along the website you went. Alarm bells went off when I read one about underage women. So I started digging. Later on, I found one singular post on Reddit that another user had found this website, and more info on the author, and this property he bought and invited people out to. I read all about it, decided, wow, that was crazy, and never revisited that website again. But now I'm questioning what happened to the land he bought. Why can't I find the website anymore? Were there victims? Sometime after posting, OP later returned with an update. Quote, "Tons of amazing suggestions and help. Thank you so much. Just wanted to give an update in order to clarify some current information. People are aware of this site, but nobody has found it yet. Someone submitted a link that was super close, and will probably help you to find the OG site. There's a little trolling and weird downvotes in the comments. Please ignore it. Cult members? Links submitted thus far in order of relevance. ammozoo.com. This website looks eerily similar. The art, the links down the center, the multicolored links. I feel like we're so close. Some other links, so they don't get resubmitted and save people time, but also so y'all can check out some weird culty websites. mentalsymmetry.com. This site hosts a ton of links, but is a completely different background style, and it's linked to what seems to be semi-lucid content. A really good guess. lhohq.info. Click the mouse. I'm not sure where they found these many horrible pictures of Mickey Mouse. Yvette's bridalformal.p1r8.net. Not relevant, but bizarre. akatistation.net. Well known and equally bizarre. OP wraps up by saying that his post isn't meant to bash the Myers-Briggs test, even though he clearly doesn't believe in it, and says that it's used by cult members. The comments are mainly comprised of Redditors suggesting other strange websites, but none of them were correct according to the OP. They also mention in the comments that they last visited the website no more than 2 years ago, so there's a decent possibility that it may still be active. But if the domain expired, and OP doesn't have it in their history or something, then this strange website, which may have been operated by a cult, got away. These internet-based pieces of lost media are always so difficult to find. There's rarely a name or corporation attached, so it just boils down to finding the right guy. I'm hoping that by sharing this post, someone out there can put this niche mystery to rest. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, I want to remind you all that I have a Spotify page now, so you can listen to my videos on the go. And I also now have a community tab for you guys to post your own lost media mysteries straight to my channel page, and I'll definitely be taking a look at them. Fully Lost, 1967 to 1968. Squirt soda commercial that supposedly displayed color on black and white TVs. This post is a strange one and takes us through several websites. However, a Reddit user on r/lostmedia compiled a rundown of the information. Apparently, people have been discussing this strange commercial since 2018, which is 7 years ago now. Oh, and if you skip the flashing lights warning in the beginning of the video, this post is what that is for. I decided to make a post about this topic because I haven't heard all that many people talk about it, and I find it quite fascinating, to be honest. It started when I stumbled upon a thread on the Talk-Base forum titled, "Anyone remember experimental color images on black and white TVs?" The poster of the thread, Verbis, states, "I don't know what prompted me to remember this. Crazy. When I was a kid, we lived in the Los Angeles area. We had a piece of shit black and white TV in the family room. Color TVs were new technology, and my parents were skeptical. One day, a Squirt commercial came on, and the voiceover said something to the effect of, 'Squirt is so bursting with flavor that you're probably seeing color on your black and white TV.' I remember scrambling over to the TV, and sure enough, there was a static image of a Squirt bottle, and it was kind of in color. This is apparently an approximation of what some viewers saw." Verbis goes on to link a blog post that quotes a newspaper article from around the same time, which goes into a lot more detail about how this illusion was done. The burst of color was not living color, as NBC frequently touted in the 1960s, but something called subjective color. It gave the illusion of color by pulsating white light in a particular sequence for each color, with a rotating device attached to a regular black and white TV camera lens. There were a few drawbacks. The images were nothing at all like true color TV. It didn't have the intensity or range of colors. As the technology currently stood, the effect could only be used on still images. Verbis explains in the comments of the Talkbase thread that this illusion was done by using something called a Benman's top. I find this to be a good video on it, although I don't recommend watching it if you have epilepsy. The effect given, being able to see color from a black and white pattern, ended up being named the Fechner color effect, after one of the several people who experimented with this illusion. According to this article from 1968, the Benham's top was inserted between the camera lens and the scene being viewed by the camera in order to create this illusion for a TV. Another source from 1968, the British TV show Tomorrow's World displayed an example of how this illusion would look when played on television. Epilepsy warning again, as the flashing displayed from this illusion is quite brutal on the eyes.
According to the most recent American research, more than half of you watching now will be seeing something which is invisible to the others. Well, did you see it? Color on a black and white system. If you didn't see it, it could be because your viewing conditions aren't right. The people who made that film say the curtain should be drawn and the lights on in your room. Here's another film from the same makers. Try blinking your eyes, that might help a bit. Now what you're looking for is the color generated in the flakes as they fall out of the packet. They're intended to appear red, blue, and green. If you still don't see it, try getting a bit nearer the set.
It seems that the people on the talk-based forum aren't the only ones who remember seeing this illusion on TV either, as the subreddit r/AskOldPeople had a post from several years ago titled, "Am I nuts? Or does anyone else remember color commercials on black and white television sets?" The user in the post describes their memory of seeing a commercial for a green colored soda that appeared to be in color, with both the user themselves and their family being impressed by it. It's very unlikely that this commercial was saved or archived anywhere, given that this was the 60s, and the majority of the commercials from back then are now long gone, and the illusion that was created for the commercial didn't last very long, which I'm honestly kind of glad for, because the strobing image required for the effect to work is very intense and hurts to look at for too long. And to be honest, it's not really all that colorful compared to what we have now. But it would be fascinating to see if there's a recording of it out there somewhere. Honestly, this piece of lost media and the phenomena of subjective color is really cool, and it's exciting how so many people remember seeing a commercial like this. By 1969, according to TV Obscurities, only about 33% of households had color TV, so the technology was available, just not widespread. The majority of people still have black and white TVs, so this effect must have been far out for the late 60s. There have been some minor search efforts, like this Reddit user who commented, "I did some deep research on this a while back, so it's cool to see someone else bringing it up. I did reach out to Dr. Pepper, who owns Squirt, and they do not have it in their archive." Consumer VCRs weren't a thing in the 60s, so the likelihood of someone having recorded this commercial when it aired is extremely low. Maybe somewhere, buried in an old broadcast reel or a private collection, lies a copy of this strange commercial just waiting to be rediscovered. Until then, it will remain a mystery. The Day the Clown Cried. If you've been in the lost media community long enough, then this title might ring a bell. It's a classic yet infamous lost film that was rumored to finally be releasing in 2025. So, what happened? Directed by and starring legendary comedian Jerry Lewis, the film has become one of the most talked about and taboo cinematic enigmas in Hollywood history. It was never officially released, never screened for the public, and for decades, Lewis himself refused to let anyone see it.
Are we going to ever gonna get to see The Day the Clown Cried?
No. No. You want to know why? Simply because it's very easy to sit in front of an audience and expound on your feelings. It's another thing to have to deal with those feelings. And in terms of that film, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed of the work, and I was grateful that I had the power to contain it all and never let anybody see it. It was bad, bad, bad.
The plot follows Helmut Dork, a washed-up German circus clown during World War II. After mocking Hitler and being imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp, Helmut is eventually forced to perform for Jewish children and lead them to the gas chambers. The final act of the film depicts a broken clown walking hand in hand with children into a gas chamber. The film was meant to be tragic, but even its earliest viewers called it disastrous. I mean, a Hollywood movie starring Jerry Lewis as a sad clown? It simply didn't work. Some early screeners described it as miscalculated. Others said it was horrifying in all the wrong ways. The final nail in the coffin came from Lewis himself, who locked the master prints away in a vault, claiming, quote, "No one will ever see it. It's embarrassing." And for a long time, that was it. In 2015, it was revealed that Jerry Lewis had donated a copy of the film to the Library of Congress, under the condition that it not be released for 10 years, or 2025. However, 1 year prior, in 2024, it was screened to journalist Benjamin Charles Germain Lee, who confirmed that the library did not contain the full film, only 5 hours of footage. In May of this year, it was revealed that actor Hans Crispin had acquired a complete work print of the film, having stolen a copy during his time working for Europa Film in 1980. And that brings us to this Reddit post. Unreleased media, a word copy of The Day the Clown Cried, has now been sold. This post, by user Car Crush, translates a Swedish article about the whereabouts of the film. Hans Crispin's pirated copy of the legendary Jerry Lewis film is the only known complete version. Swedish actor and TV personality Hans Crispin recently revealed to the magazine Icon that in 1980 he stole a film reel of the legendary Jerry Lewis film The Day the Clown Cried and made a pirated copy, which he has kept for 45 years. The film, which is about a clown in Auschwitz during the Holocaust, has never been publicly shown and is considered a holy grail for film enthusiasts. It has long been regarded as lost. The copy Crispin has is the only known version with intact editing and sound. Hans Crispin, who at the time worked copying porn films to VHS at Europa Film, stole the film along with a co-conspirator and kept it in secret for decades. In the Coulter Niehetzscharna interview a few weeks ago, he said he was now done with the secrets and ready to pass it on to the next generation. And he has done so. I have sold it for a modest sum. I can't reveal more. They came here and watched it. They made an offer. I accepted it, signed a paper, and promised not to tell anything more. When asked how he feels about having sold something he stole and pirated so long ago, he responds that he has reflected on it over the years. Yes, I stole it, and I've thought about it. You're not supposed to do that. That's how it is. But I really wanted to preserve it, and I looked up the statute of limitations a long time ago. 2 years. And the rights to this film are so tangled that no one really knows who has the rights to this copy. How does it feel now that your big secret is out? A bit empty, actually. I mean, I can't watch the film anymore. I've always been able to before, or show to someone. You and Caroline Hayner were the last to see The Day the Clown Cried at my place. So this is a bit of a downer ending. Infamous film was apparently so bad, all the footage was locked away in the Library of Congress, who, according to curator Rob Stone, have no intentions on ever releasing it. A copy was stolen by a film employee who wanted to pass it on for the next generation, only to sell it to an anonymous seller. My gut is telling me that's it. Rare media attracts hoarders and private collectors who want to keep it all to themselves. Maybe back then, films that blended World War II with comedy and clowns was a bit too taboo. But there are similar films today, and even some that have won awards. So, who knows? Unless anything major happens, like the anonymous buyer coming forward, or the library changing their mind, The Day the Clown Cried will remain a lost film.
I mean this with no exaggeration. It's not just lip service, nor is it just some phony baloney machismo from me. If I lived in the UK, I swear with my hand on a stack of Bibles, I would leave right now as a result of everything that's happening with the Online Safety Act. It is the most anti-freedom legislation I've seen just blatantly get pushed through onto its citizens. It is unbelievable how bad it's already spiraling out of control. And it started dystopian. Again, a word I don't like to use loosey-goosey because that word has lost a lot of meaning thanks to Redditors tossing it around anytime a slight inconvenience even unfolds, like my Cheerios weren't perfectly symmetrical. This is a dystopian society we live in. Like, I hate using that word, but I mean it for its very literal definition here. What's happening in the UK is dystopian. For those that don't know, a piece of legislation has been enacted called the Online Safety Act, which requires you to verify your ID to access certain content online, meaning you have to prove that you are of age to get access to it. That means giving the government your ID or biometric data through facial scans. The people were misled what this was even about in the first place because they paraded the Online Safety Act around as if it was a righteous push to protect children online from being exposed to harmful content, specifically pornography. A classic move straight from the playbook of John Madden. You target porn because it's a very easy target. Most people don't want kids to have access to porn, obviously. There are innumerable problems with porn. So it's very easy messaging to have be the big boogeyman here that you need to fight against. We gotta stop it now. We have to act. We have to do something. People are dying. They're collapsing. They're fucking combusting. Corpses littering the streets. So here's what we're doing. It's called the Online Safety Act. It's our last defense, our last hope. We have to fight it now. They were able to get this through, and it was a Trojan horse that had so many consequential problems attached to it. A lot of really yucky, bad, awful hemorrhoids on the Online Safety Act. And now that it's in effect, the citizens recognize just how butt-fucked they are by the government, getting their guts rearranged here, because the government is elbow deep in everyone's ass trying to get you to give over all of your identification. So it's not just verifying your age to access porn, you have to verify your age to access a multitude of services. This includes things like Reddit, Twitter, Discord to use certain features, Wikipedia, some other forms, and today, it's been announced, that's going to apply to Spotify as well. We're going to dive deep into the spaghetti and the meatballs there in a moment, but you can see what's happening. This is very obvious that the Online Safety Act was never about protecting children or protecting anyone from anything. It's only ever been about control and mass surveillance. This is all about censoring what you have access to so the government can constantly track and monitor your activities online, because they are requiring you to give your ID to access anything at all that could even be moderately argued could have harmful content on it. Fucking Spotify. It is out of control. And the ghouls in power over there are doing their best to desperately try and convince you that this is a good thing. They want you to stop making noise about it and stop trying to overturn it. So there's this vile bug named Peter Kyle who made this tweet saying, if you want to overturn the Online Safety Act, you are on the side of predators. It is as simple as that. And he got community noted, obviously, and got dunked on out the wazoo. The community note stating, opposing the Online Safety Act isn't siding with predators, it's defending free speech. The law enables censorship, mass surveillance, and vague harm rules that threaten privacy and dissent. Right groups worldwide have called it a danger to democracy. By the way, here's a fun little nugget of lore about Peter Kyle, the patriot of protection over there. He allegedly voted against a statutory national inquiry into grooming gangs and group-based child sexual exploitation as part of the Children's Well-Being in Schools bill. He defended labor's resistance on TV, citing existing inquiries, but critics linked this to his past association with Ivor Kaplan, a former Labor MP accused in related scandals, and accused him of prioritizing political convenience over victim justice. Oh, that's really weird, Peter. You care so much about protecting children, yet you voted against an inquiry into, looking into this here? That's odd. Seems like it kind of conflicts with what you're trying to put on here with this strong face about how much you care about making sure children are safe online.
This is the biggest step forward in child safety since the internet was created. There is, since Friday last week, children and parents will notice the difference in the experience that children have. Most children do not go looking for harmful and dangerous and pornographic content. Most children actually have found that the content has come to find them. That's why we've acted so decisively in this. And for everybody who's out there thinking of using VPNs, let me just say to you directly, verifying your age keeps a child safe, keeps children safe in our country. So let's just not try and find a way around. Just prove your age, make the internet safer for children, make it a better experience for everyone. That's surely what we should aspire to in this country.
Do your part. Give us all of your identification information and biometric data so we can spy on you, because that's going to keep all the children safe. While we control what you have access to, just know, sleep easy at night knowing you're saving lives of kids out there. Meanwhile, apparently Peter Kyle's hands are totally tied when it comes to anything about like the grooming gangs. I guess that's not worth looking into at all. This is the real big enchilada right here, making sure that kids can't access Spotify features or Wikipedia features. That's the real meat and potatoes that they want to make sure kids, don't get fucking blasted with harmful content while they're just innocently listening to Spotify. This looks like a symptom of a functioning, sane society. You're listening to some music on Spotify and then whoops-a-daisy, holy Toledo, we need to check your age. To access certain content and features on Spotify, we need to make sure you're 18 or older. This won't take long. And then you confirm I'm 18 plus. And look how much fun you have when you give over your ID or your biometric data. Then the whole society is functioning and happy, big old smiles on everyone's faces as the government literally has its foot on your throat at all times monitoring you. Whoopee! Wait, what's that? You don't want to give over your ID or do our facial scans in order to earn permission to the content? What? You don't want to be a good noodle? Okay, well here's what's going to happen. Your account's going to get deactivated. You cannot use Spotify if you don't meet the minimum age requirements for the market you're in. If you cannot confirm you're old enough to use Spotify, your account will be deactivated and eventually deleted. If your account was deactivated due to an inaccurate age estimation, you can look for the email in your inbox which allows you to reactivate your account within 90 days of deactivation and then go through ID verification. If we still can't confirm you're old enough to use Spotify, or if no action is taken within 7 days of reactivation, your account will be permanently deleted. So you either play ball or you lose your account. This is for all accounts, by the way. This is like paid accounts, fucking student accounts. Every account on Spotify, from what I can tell, is subject to this now. So if you want to use Spotify and have access to all of the content and features, you will have to give over your ID or your biometric data so the government can spy on you. That's insanity. That's absolute lunacy. There is no defending that. There is no mental gymnastics that can be done to justify this. It is so clear that this was never about protecting children or protecting anyone. It's out of control, and it is only getting worse. I mean it. I would leave the UK because of this. There is no longer like a free internet intact over there. Your only answer is VPNs, and Peter Kyle's going to shame you, shake his finger at you if you use VPNs, trying to find a way around this. Because then you're just on the side of pedophiles, I guess. You're on the side of predators if you oppose the Online Safety Act. A just society ensures that every one of its citizens is giving over their ID and biometric data to the government in order to listen to music on Spotify, obviously. That's the only way to keep all the children safe. Think of the children, won't you? Oh, it's preposterous. It's scary. It's actually scary. And like I said, this isn't exclusive to just the UK. There is a similar piece of legislation that is looking to be enacted in the US. I'm hoping it doesn't pass. I really hope it doesn't pass. But the groundwork is being laid here. It has successfully gone through in the UK, and it's showing no signs of stopping. It's only getting worse. So yeah, I just wanted to yap about this a bit more. This is something everyone needs to be aware of and concerned about. That's it. See ya.
This TikToker traded up from nothing to a house and then gave this house away to another TikTok user in need, only to find out a year later that that person she gave it to destroyed the house and is now trying to ruin her life. My main question is why? But it's safe to say that what started as one of the more wholesome stories to come out of social media recently ended up in becoming one of the most heartbreaking examples of kindness being taken advantage of. So, this TikToker spent 18 months of her life trading up from a bobby pin to get a house. She then completely renovated it and gave it away to someone in need, only to find out that it was destroyed and abandoned roughly a year later, followed by accusations that she was a fraud. And the worst part is, the one who accused the TikToker of being a fraud and destroyed the house was the same TikToker who had been given the house in the first place. How does that even happen? But before we dive into that story, if you've never heard of the whole trading up concept before, it's essentially what it says on the tin. You start with something completely worthless and then you just keep trading it up until I guess you're happy. And if you stay persistent enough and are lucky enough to meet a bunch of kind people and you're very public with it on social media, you could end up with something pretty amazing, especially when you tie it into doing something charitable. And this whole thing was popularized back in 2005 when a man by the name of Kyle McDonald began with just one red paperclip. Almost an entire year later, and after only 14 trades, he ended up with an actual house. And since then, dozens of social media creators have made their own spin-off versions of this trend, including Ryan Trahan, who probably had the most popular version of this called the Penny Challenge. But after taking some inspiration from the original challenge, in 2022, a TikToker decided to revive the concept and put a fresh take on it. Instead of keeping the final reward she ended up with, she chose to give it away to someone who actually needed it. And unlike back in 2005 when the original creator of the One Red Paperclip project first attempted it, we now live in an era of masses being on social media. So turning this journey into content was a no-brainer and no doubt helped tremendously with this challenge. So meet Demi Skipper, the TikToker who saw the One Red Paperclip as a chance to do something positive. She created the Trade Me project, in which she started to trade from a single bobby pin with the ultimate goal of eventually ending up with a house. Here she documented her entire journey on social media channels, posting videos of each trade as she slowly worked her way up from that bobby pin to increasingly valuable items.
So I can't buy anything, I can't use any money, and I can't trade anyone I know. I started with a bobby pin. From that bobby pin, I traded for a pair of earrings. Those earrings then went for margarita glasses. It was a set of 4. And then after that, a vacuum, then a snowboard. That snowboard then went for an Apple TV, and the Apple TV for a pair of Bose headphones, which I thought was awesome. Then an Xbox, a very old MacBook.
So yeah, you get the point. So about 10 trades later, we started seeing some big trades.
Then the Peloton, and then from the Peloton, a Mustang, a Jeep, a tiny cabin on wheels, a Honda CR-V, then the Honda went for 3 tractors, and then the 3 tractors went for the Chipotle celebrity card.
After landing the Chipotle celebrity card, which granted unlimited free food for a year plus a fully catered dinner for 50 people, totaling an estimated value of $20,000, many people believed that Demi's challenge had actually peaked. Some people said trading it away would be the worst mistake of her entire journey, because no one would ever offer anything worth more than that. But Demi did not listen. Determined to prove them wrong, she carefully mapped out her next steps. Her focus then shifted to celebrities who were die-hard Chipotle fans. She became the Bureau of Burritos. If someone had ever been photographed holding a Chipotle burrito, chances are they were already on her radar. Demi actually got close to closing a deal with a couple of NFL players, but those negotiations ended up falling through in the last minute. Then, after months of dead ends, an unexpected email came through from a woman by the name of Alyssa, proudly calling herself Chipotle's biggest fan. She reached out from Canada. Alyssa ran a flower business and was willing to offer something that completely flipped the game. An off-the-grid trailer equipped with solar panels and a Tesla Powerwall, valued at about $40,000. And against all odds, Demi had found someone who not only matched, but double the card's value.
I am so excited to let you guys know that I've officially made my new trade, and it's worth $40,000. In my last trade, I traded 3 tractors for a Chipotle celebrity card, which gives its new owner unlimited Chipotle for an entire year, starting from the day they get the card. This trade, like so many others, was a tough one. So I got to work until I found Alyssa. Alyssa runs a sustainable flower company called Ladybug, and also happens to be one of the biggest Chipotle fans I've ever met.
But just as it seemed like everything was falling into place, Demi was hit with one of the most frustrating hurdles of her entire journey. It was 2020. We were still in the post-COVID era, so stuff was locked down. So because of that, borders, they've been closed since 2020 from the US to Canada. So it wasn't super easy to just move a trailer from Canada into the US. And after weeks of navigating paperwork and border regulations, she finally found a way to make it happen, only to be told that the trailer's wheels were illegal under US transportation standards. So Demi, once again, was stuck. She then called the department every day, even offering to file the paperwork herself if that's what it took. But there was no way around it. She had to wait. For 3 entire months, the $40,000 trailer sat untouched in Canada. Eventually, though, a kind follower of her project offered to pick up the trailer and store it in her driveway near the US border until Demi could get it. So she and her husband packed up their car and drove 15 hours north. Once they finally laid eyes on the trailer, they decorated it, photographed it, and got it ready for the next trade. And before they even made it back home, the next opportunity had already come knocking. Because while her husband was driving them back home, Demi was back on the grind, scrolling through messages, searching for her next trade until she found a DM of a woman who showed interest in the trailer. So Demi messaged her back to see if there was any real potential here. The woman revealed that she was a professional house flipper, someone who'd owned around 15 properties at a given time. Apparently, she'd been following the Trade Me project from pretty much the very beginning, just waiting for the right time to come along. And she wanted to trade one of her homes, a house in Tennessee, for the trailer.
Okay, we're walking up to it. This feels so surreal. Oh my god. Oh my god. A year and a half of trading a single bobby pin until I get a house. And I've done it.
So that was it. After a long 28 trades, countless hours of negotiating, Demi finally landed the big one, an actual house.
This is my house. Answer, please.
You walk through the front door and you're immediately in the main living room of the house with wall-to-wall hardwood floors. Next, just off the living room is the kitchen, with enough room for a small table, but definitely in need of some new cabinets and counters. Going to the back of the house is the first bedroom with new carpet and a big-sized closet, followed by the second bedroom down the hall, with also a good-sized closet and a great view out the windows to the backyard. Lastly is the bathroom with a tub. It's definitely dated, but can be fixed up to be really beautiful.
But here's the thing, the house she ended up with was pretty much falling apart. Not only were there a lot of structural issues, but it was genuinely just very outdated.
We got a call that things weren't going as planned, so we went to go check it out. First, the structure that's supposed to keep the wall up doesn't actually connect to the ground. It looks like it's completely rotted away. Second, there's nearly nothing holding up this floor. Right here you can see 3 joists, but there's supposed to be many more of these. And then it rained.
And there is 6 inches of standing water.
However, Demi and her husband, they were not going to let that stop them, so they decided to renovate the entire place from top to bottom. And it's safe to say, they absolutely crushed it.
And here's what it looks like now. We fixed the foundation, put in new hardwood floors, completely redid the kitchen with all new appliances, added a washer dryer in the hallway, new beds, including a bed for her dog, and a brand new bathroom. I can't believe it all came from a single bobby pin.
They got a new roof, new appliances, new furniture, and beds. They even updated the siding and added an outdoor grilling patio in the backyard. I mean, they turned this entire old-looking house into a brand new home. And the fact they did all of that just to provide a home for someone else is extremely impressive. Once the renovation was complete, Demi put out a word that they were looking for someone to take ownership of the house, and they started accepting applications. And I can only imagine how tough this time actually was, because they received over 2,000 submissions from people explaining why they needed help. And after reviewing all of them, one person stood out above everyone else. Her name was Shay. She was a 19-year-old woman from Pennsylvania. In the video of her submission, Shay explained that her mother had passed away in a car accident when she was just 2 years old. So she and her siblings moved in with their dad. But then he unfortunately got cancer a few years later, became very depressed, and ended up... So she then moved in with her grandparents, but her grandpa passed away and her grandma got pneumonia and had been hospitalized for an extended period of time. During the time her grandma was in the hospital, her uncle moved in. And according to Shay, he was abusive and had problems with alcohol. And when her grandma then eventually came home from the hospital, she just wasn't the same person anymore.
That same month, my grandmother was discharged from the nursing home. and that gave me a little bit of hope, and I thought that maybe it would switch his act up a bit and everything would be good. But unfortunately, that was not the case.
So obviously, going off of this story, Shay's entire childhood was definitely tough. She had never really had stability or a place to call home. By the time she was 18, she couldn't mentally handle living in that situation anymore. So she moved in with a friend. And that's where she was living when she submitted her application to the Trade Me project. And after seeing this, Demi and her husband decided she would be the perfect person for this house. And most importantly, this wasn't going to come with any mortgage, rent, or monthly bills. It was completely free, no strings attached, which is an extremely charitable thing to do. So Demi flew out to Pennsylvania to tell Shay in person. And you could see how grateful Shay looked when she found out the surprise.
Hi! We came all the way here because I felt like I wanted to see you in person, and I'm here to tell you that the house is yours. There's no way. Yeah, it's yours. Yeah. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
And it did not stop there. Demi also attended Shay's graduation, helped her boyfriend, and his mother move into the house, and even set up an Amazon wish list so her followers could donate household essentials and have them delivered directly to Shay's new address. And then on top of all of that, they gave her a $10,000 check to help her get started in her new life in Tennessee. She really went above and beyond for this new family. This, without a doubt, is like someone winning the lottery. To get a free home to live in perpetually, 10 grand, a bunch of free stuff in the house. It's safe to say the Trade Me project completely changed Shay's life. But unfortunately, that's where everything started to go downhill very fast. So Shay, her boyfriend, and her mother moved into the house and got settled. And for a while, everything seemed fine. But then Demi started getting messages from Shay's neighbors. Apparently, there were several packages sitting outside of the house, getting rained on, and the neighbor was really concerned about them. Demi immediately reached out to Shay to ask about it, and Shay explained that she was back in Pennsylvania visiting for a few days, and she couldn't find a flight back to Tennessee. Okay, no big deal. People visit their families. That's normal. Except a week went by and Demi still hadn't heard anything from Shay, and the packages, they were still sitting there. So she then reached out again, asking if Shay was coming home yet or if the neighbor could drop off the packages. She also asked if Shay could take some pictures of the rugs, the house, because the company that donated them wanted to use those photos for marketing purposes. But unfortunately, there was no response. So she kept trying, and then finally, Shay replied, saying that she would be home that night and she would take the pictures. But that night came and went, and nothing happened. 3 more days passed before Demi reached out again, and Shay's excuse was she had only had Wi-Fi sometimes, which doesn't quite add up, but okay. So for the next 2 months, the same pattern kept repeating. Demi would reach out, get no response at all, or some random excuse to why Shay wasn't back yet or couldn't do whatever she was being asked to do. Eventually, Demi just donated all those packages to Goodwill because she couldn't get a straight answer about when Shay would actually be there to pick up the packages. And in October, Demi finally asked the question that was probably on her mind for months. She flat out asked Shay if she was actually planning to move into the house, because if not, she wanted to give it to someone who would actually live there and appreciate it. And Shay's response was interesting, to put it lightly. She said she definitely planned on moving in, but admitted that she had booked flights multiple times and then canceled them in the last minute because she was scared. She mentioned being afraid because she didn't have a driver's license and would have to rely on buses or Uber to get around. She also mentioned her dog, saying how much it loved it there and how she wanted to pass the house down to someone else who needed it. Demi's response was incredibly understanding and patient. She said that she totally got it, and she said she was proud of Shay and she didn't mind managing everything while Shay figured things out. But despite Demi's continued patience and support, 14 months went by with basically no updates and no real communication. So after 14 months of managing a house from out of state with no real contact from the person who was actually living there, Demi and her husband decided they needed to drive to Tennessee to check on the property themselves. And what they found was so much worse than what they could have imagined. The house was completely trashed. There were urine stains on the floor, trash shoved in the closets, the kitchen was a disaster, and the fridge was full of rotten food.
So August 13th, 2023, I actually went down to Clarksville to see what was happening with this house. She hadn't been there in 14 months, and this is where things get insane. We got to the house, and the house was completely ruined. Everything inside, but essentially there was pee on the ground. All of the garbage that had been used in the month that she was there was jammed into closets, so you can imagine what it looks like after 14 months. I've never seen anything like this. I cried in the front yard of the house. Just can't imagine that somebody would do this. And after 14 months of me talking with her this entire time and her saying she was moving back, we're just waiting, we just needed more time. And I honestly believed that.
But this wasn't just neglect. There was intentional damage throughout the house. Things that would cost serious money to repair that had been deliberately destroyed. This place was basically uninhabitable after all of that work that they had done for free, essentially. There was no real upside with all the effort that they put in to this house except for giving a nice home to someone who was in need. The amount of time, energy, and money they put into this place to have it look like this? Why? Why would someone ever do that to someone? So immediately after discovering the state of the house, Demi messaged Shay, confronting her about the condition of the property. She said that she was shocked and devastated from what she found, and that if she didn't hear back, she would assume that due to the property damage and the health violations, Shay would no longer have access to the house. This time, Shay actually responded with an apology. She admitted that she was lost and confused about being an adult, and that she was only 19 years old and didn't know what she was doing. Shay then said that she was sorry about everything and that she was upset and disappointed in herself as well. No matter how you've been brought up, you can easily recognize someone's generosity here. And to completely neglect that and use the excuse of, oh, I'm only 19 years old, that is just laughably stupid. That is pathetic. I, like probably most of you guys, had moved out of my parents' house by the time I was 19. And I doubt any of us left our first home in that condition. So Demi rightfully reclaimed the house due to the extensive damage, and Shay accepted this with no resistance whatsoever. But then, 2 weeks later, as you can guess, the story just got even weirder. Shay then decided to post a TikTok video calling out Demi and making it seem like Demi had just decided to take the house back for no good reason at all. Hold up, what? What? So at this point, Demi had stayed completely silent about what had actually happened. She hadn't said anything publicly about the condition of the house or anything about Shay's months of absence. So then, I guess she had to make this video.
You might have seen this video. In order to protect Shay, I had decided not to post anything about this entire situation, but now it's time to come with the receipts.
But when Shay posted that original video, Demi started getting bombarded with hate comments and messages from people who essentially thought that she cruelly took the house away from someone in need. This basically forced Demi's hand to provide all the receipts. So she had no choice but to share the screenshots of their text conversations and explain what had actually happened. The months of no communication, the trashed house, everything that we've covered up until now. And after Demi's side of the story blew up, it didn't take long for Shay to make all of her social media accounts private and remove all of her content. And as far as I know, since Shay never signed off for the house transfer documents, Demi still owns the house, and presumably had to spend even more money getting it back to a livable condition. However, after everything that had happened, she understandably stopped sharing any future updates about this situation publicly, which is honestly just heartbreaking on every level. You have Demi, who spent so much time and probably tens of thousands of dollars turning a worthless bobby pin into a fully renovated house. Also, she could, I guess, try to change someone's life for the better. But then you have Shay, who, regardless of her rough circumstances, showed up and destroyed that dream. And unfortunately for Shay, that might have been the handout of her lifetime. Because honestly, I don't think there will ever be anyone else in her life that will step up for her like the stranger on the internet Demi did for her. The fact that it ended this way is just tragic for everyone involved. The truth is, like, we may never know the full story of what happened in that house during those 14 months. Was it just teenage irresponsibility? Was there some substance abuse involved? Maybe some mental health issues that weren't being addressed? Like, could it be that Shay was secretly renting the house out to other people and they were the ones who destroyed this? Who knows? There's so many random possibilities here. Or maybe the problem was giving such a huge responsibility to someone so young who had never had any stability in their life. When you've never had a real home, maybe you don't know how to take care of one. Who knows? But what is clear is someone was given an incredible opportunity. A completely free house, no strings attached, along with $10,000 and a bunch of items, and somehow ended up trashing the place and disappearing for over a year. This whole situation is just a reminder that real life is very complicated, and sometimes even the most generous gestures can go wrong with no fault of the person trying to help. But hopefully, stories like this don't discourage people from being kind and generous in the future. The world definitely needs more people like Demi, who are willing to go out of their way and help others, even if it doesn't always work out the way they'd hoped for. But either way, what Demi and her husband did was incredibly inspiring, and nobody can ever take that away from them. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe, drop a like on this video if you enjoyed the story, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. No way to fly into my softbox. I've had one fly terrorize me for the last, like, 2 days. How long do house flies? 28 days?
The VTuber world was thrown into a frenzy recently after it was revealed by a massive content creator known as Iron Mouse that her previous talent agency, The Shoujo, had been engaging in what I like to call jiggery pokery. If none of that makes sense to you, please sit back and allow me to explain. Just so everyone's on the same page, VTuber stands for Virtual YouTuber, and this term describes people that live stream and make content using a motion capture filter.